Jackson sat in the cockpit of his ship, watching as the strange alien world slowly grew larger on the screen. He'd been sent to negotiate trade agreements with the people of planet Arova, a peaceful race known for their advanced technology and strong cultural values. As the ship began to land, Jackson tightened his grip on the controls. He wasn't nervous. He'd handled negotiations before. But this world was different. He had heard stories of the Uravan people, how they valued strength, wisdom, and honor. The ship landed smoothly on the surface, and Jackson stepped out, his boots touching the soft blue soil of Arova. The air was thin but breathable. The sky had a pale, greenish hue that made everything feel calm and peaceful. A group of Uravan representatives waited for him near the landing zone, their tall, thin bodies shimmering in the light. They all had soft, golden skin and wore intricate robes that seemed to float around them. One of the representatives, a woman, with long, flowing hair and a calm demeanor, approached him. "Welcome to Irova, human. I am Kayla," she said, her voice smooth but firm. "Thank you," Jackson replied, shaking her hand. "I'm here to discuss the terms of our trade agreement. I trust we can come to a fair arrangement." Kayla nodded, her green eyes studying him closely. "Of course, but first, there is something I must ask you. Human, do you have a companion yet?" Jackson blinked, caught off guard by the question. "A companion? What do you mean?" Kayla smiled, a hint of mischief in her eyes. "A mate. A partner. Someone to share your life with." Jackson felt his face flush slightly. He wasn't used to such personal questions so quickly, especially not from an alien. He had been to many planets, met many people, but this was the first time anyone had asked him such a direct question before he could respond. Kayla continued, "My mother Ilva has told me much about humans. She says your kind is strong and your hearts are brave. You should not be alone." She paused, looking at him thoughtfully. "My mother is a skilled cook and an even better warrior. She bakes the most delicious food, and she can kill a man with her bare hands. I believe she would make a good companion for you. Do you consider taking her as your wife?" Jackson's mouth went dry. He wasn't sure if Kayla was joking or if this was some kind of cultural ritual. "Wait, your mother?" he asked, struggling to process the information. "You want me to marry your mother?" Kayla nodded. "Yes, she is strong and wise. She's the perfect match for a warrior like you." Jackson blinked again, unsure of how to respond. He didn't know much about the Rovan culture, but he had to admit Kayla's words were intriguing. There was something about her, something powerful and confident, that made him curious about what she was saying. But marrying her mother? That was something he hadn't expected. I'm not sure I understand," Jackson said, still trying to make sense of the situation. Kayla's smile grew wider. "It's simple. If you're strong enough to face the dangers of the galaxy, you should not be alone. My mother can provide for you in ways that you cannot imagine. She is a cook, yes, but she is also a warrior. She has defended our world from many threats, and she is not easily defeated." Before Jackson could say anything, Kayla's voice softened. "I know this is a strange request, but my mother has been alone for many years. She needs a partner, someone who can stand beside her as an equal. And you are a warrior. I believe the two of you would make a great team." Jackson wasn't sure what to think. He'd come to Irova expecting a standard diplomatic mission, but this was completely unexpected. He was a soldier, used to facing danger and making tough decisions. But this felt like a challenge of a different kind. Marrying an alien woman's mother. A warrior who could bake and kill. "Kayla, I'm flattered," Jackson said, still trying to wrap his mind around the situation. "But I don't even know your mother. I've just arrived." Kayla nodded, her expression softening. "You will get to know her. She is kind and strong, and she understands the ways of the world. If you choose to accept this offer, you will have a partner who will never leave your side, someone who will support you through every challenge." Jackson was silent for a moment, considering her words. He had seen a lot in his time as a soldier. He had fought in battles, defended colonies, and made countless sacrifices for the greater good. But he had never thought about companionship in the way Kayla described. He had always been alone, focusing on his mission, on the fight. The idea of having someone by his side, someone strong and capable, was both strange and intriguing. "Need to meet her first," Jackson said, finally. "I need to understand more about her and this culture before I can make any decisions." Kayla smiled again, a knowing look in her eyes. "Of course, I will arrange for you to meet her. But be warned, Jackson. Ilva is not like any woman you have ever met. She does not follow the rules. She makes her own." Jackson wasn't sure if that was a warning or an invitation, but he nodded. "I'll keep that in mind." As Kayla led him through the city of Arova, Jackson couldn't help but wonder what he had gotten himself into. The Rovan people were unlike any he had encountered before. Their world was beautiful and peaceful, yet there was an underlying strength to them, a quiet power that Jackson could feel in his bones. And now, he was about to meet the woman Kayla had described, someone who could bake and kill. He couldn't deny the curiosity building inside him. What would Ilva be like? Was she really as powerful as Kayla said? More importantly, was he ready for the kind of partnership Kayla was offering? The answers were just ahead, and Jackson couldn't wait to find out. Jackson followed Kayla through the streets of Arova's capital city, feeling the weight of her words on his mind. She had promised to introduce him to her mother Ilva, the woman who could bake and kill. Jackson had never heard anything like it before. He had seen strong warriors, skilled cooks, and wise leaders, but never someone who could combine all of those traits. As they walked, he couldn't help but feel more curious about Ilva and the Uravan people. The city around them was unlike anything he had ever seen. The buildings were tall and made of smooth, shimmering materials that seemed to change color with the light. The streets were lined with trees that had large silver leaves, and the air smelled fresh and clean. The Uravan people moved quietly through the city, speaking in soft tones and giving off a sense of calm and peace. "Do all of your people live like this?" Jackson asked, looking around at the peaceful surroundings. Kayla nodded. "Yes, we live in harmony with our world. Our people believe in balanced strength and peace, wisdom and power. We do not fight for the sake of fighting, but we are always prepared to defend ourselves when necessary." Jackson was impressed by her words. It seemed that the Uravan people were both peaceful and strong, which was a rare combination in the galaxy. As they approached a large, beautiful building, Kayla stopped and turned to Jackson. "This is our home," she said, her voice quiet. "My mother will be waiting for us inside, but remember, she is not like other women you have met. She is strong, independent, and she expects nothing less than respect." Jackson nodded. "I understand." Kayla led him inside, and they were greeted by a warm, inviting smell that made Jackson's stomach growl. He had been so focused on the mission and the strange offer from Kayla that he hadn't realized how hungry he was. The room they entered was large and open, with high ceilings and large windows that let in the soft, golden light from outside. In the center of the room, a large stone oven was built into the wall. Jackson could see a woman working in front of it, stirring something in a large pot. The woman had long, dark hair that fell in soft waves down her back. She wore simple clothes, but there was something about her that made her seem more powerful than anyone Jackson had ever met. Her presence was calm, but strong, and her movements were graceful, yet purposeful. Kayla walked over to her mother and spoke in a language Jackson didn't understand. The woman looked up and smiled warmly at her daughter before turning to Jackson. Her eyes were a striking shade of blue, and they seemed to see right through him. "Ah, the human warrior," she said in perfect English, her voice rich and warm. "Welcome to my home." Jackson felt a chill run down his spine. There was something about Ilva that made him feel both nervous and curious. She had the presence of someone who had seen and done many things. Someone who had lived through wars and battles, but who also understood the value of peace and family. "Thank you for having me," Jackson said, unsure of what else to say. Ilva smiled and motioned for him to sit. "Please, have a seat. I have just finished preparing a meal. Kayla tells me you are hungry." Jackson took a seat at the long wooden table, and Ilva placed a large bowl of food in front of him. The meal smelled incredible spices, herbs, and a rich, savory aroma that made his mouth water. As he picked up his fork, he couldn't help but notice the scars on Ilva's hands. They were old, faded, but still visible. He wondered where they had come from. What kind of battles had she fought in? "You've heard of my reputation, I'm sure," Ilva said, as if reading his mind. "I have cooked for kings and fought in battles. I have seen the horrors of war, and I have seen the beauty of peace. But no matter where I go or what I do, I always return to my kitchen. Cooking is my greatest passion, and it is where I find peace. But I also believe in protecting my people. I will do whatever it takes to keep them safe." Jackson nodded, understanding the balance she spoke of. He had seen many warriors who only valued battle and violence, but Ilva was different. She valued peace, but she was also ready to fight when necessary. She was not someone to be taken lightly. As they ate, Ilva continued to speak, sharing stories of her past. She told Jackson about her younger years, when she had trained to become a warrior. She spoke of the many battles she had fought in, each one more dangerous than the last. She told him about the time she had defeated an entire group of raiders who had attacked her village. She had used nothing but her bare hands, her strength, and her knowledge of combat to take them down. But it wasn't just her fighting skills that impressed Jackson. It was the way she spoke, calm, measured, with a sense of wisdom that came from experience. She didn't boast or brag about her accomplishments. Instead, she shared them as if they were just a part of who she was, a part of her life. As the meal ended, Ilva stood and began cleaning up. She moved gracefully, her movements smooth and efficient. Jackson couldn't help but watch her, admiring the way she carried herself. He had met many strong people in his life, but Ilva was something else entirely. She was a warrior, a cook, a protector. She was everything he had been looking for in a partner, I must admit. Jackson said, as Ilva finished cleaning, "I'm impressed by everything you've done. Your strength, your cooking, your wisdom. It's unlike anything I've seen." Before, Ilva smiled again, but this time there was a hint of something deeper in her eyes. Strength is not just about physical power, Jackson. It is about knowing when to fight and when to show compassion. It is about balance. If you understand that, you will understand me. Jackson felt something shift inside him. He had come to Arova expecting one thing, but now he was beginning to realize that his journey here had been more than just a mission. It was about something deeper, something more important. He looked at Ilva and Kayla, and for the first time he felt like he was truly seeing them. Not just as powerful warriors or skilled cooks, but as people with hearts and minds that understood the balance of life. And maybe, just maybe, he was beginning to understand why Kayla had offered her mother's companionship in the first place. Jackson spent the next few days adjusting to life on Arova. He had never been in a place like this before, so peaceful, yet so full of power. The Yarovan people were calm and kind, but there was a quiet strength in each of them. He had spent a lot of time with Kayla and Ilva, getting to know more about their world and the customs that shaped their lives. The longer he stayed, the more fascinated he became by their way of life. One evening, Kayla came to him with urgent news. "Jackson, we need to speak," she said, her voice low and serious. Jackson followed her into a quiet room inside the house. Ilva was already there, sitting calmly at a large table with several maps spread out before her. There was a heavy air in the room, and Jackson could feel the tension building. "What's going on?" he asked, feeling a little uneasy. Ilva looked up at him, her expression serious but composed. "We have a problem," she said. "There are forces within our galaxy that do not want peace. They are preparing to attack us, and they believe we are weak because of our peaceful ways. They think we can be easily defeated." Jackson was taken aback. He had assumed that Arova, with all its peace and beauty, was untouchable. But now he realized that even the most peaceful places were vulnerable to those who sought power through violence. "These forces are planning something big," Kayla added. "They believe we have no defenses, but they are wrong. My mother and I will protect our people, and we will fight if we must." Jackson felt a sense of urgency rising inside him. He had always been a soldier, trained to protect and defend. But he had never faced a situation like this one where the stakes were so high. And the enemy was unknown. "What do you need me to do?" Jackson asked, his voice steady despite the rising tension. Ilva looked at him, her eyes sharp and calculating. "You are not just a soldier, Jackson. You are a warrior. We need someone who understands the art of war, someone who knows how to fight strategically. We need your expertise." Kayla nodded. "We have already begun preparing, but your help could make all the difference. We will not back down. If we have to fight, we will fight to win." Jackson felt a sense of purpose settle over him. He had been trained for this. He had fought in countless battles, faced down enemies that seemed impossible to defeat. But this was different. This wasn't just a battle for land or resources. This was a fight for the future of Arova. Fight to protect a peaceful world from those who would destroy it for their own gain. "I'm in," Jackson said, his voice firm. "I'll help you prepare." "What's the plan?" Ilva stood and began pacing, her mind clearly racing with strategies. "We cannot wait for them to strike first. We must strike first. Disrupt their plans before they can reach us. We will need to gather all our allies, prepare our defenses, and train everyone for battle." Kayla looked at her mother, then at Jackson. "There is something else you should know. The enemy is powerful, but they have a weakness. They underestimate us. They think we are just a peaceful world with no military strength, but we have something they don't expect." Ilva's eyes glinted with quiet determination. "We have our strength in unity, and we have something even more valuable, a deep understanding of our environment and how to use it to our advantage." Jackson nodded, beginning to see the bigger picture. He had trained many soldiers over the years, but this felt different. The Arovan people were not just warriors. They were a people who understood balance. They knew when to fight and when to retreat, when to stand their ground and when to use their surroundings to their advantage. "I'll do whatever it takes," Jackson said. "Just tell me what I need to do." Over the next few days, Jackson worked closely with Ilva and Kayla, helping to train the Yerevan soldiers and strategizing for the coming battle. Ilva showed Jackson the advanced techniques she had developed. Over the years, techniques that combined her cooking skills and her martial prowess. She taught him how to use everyday tools as weapons, how to turn the environment into an ally rather than just a backdrop for the fight. One evening, after a long day of training, Jackson found himself sitting in the large kitchen of Ilva's home, his thoughts racing. He was still processing everything that had happened in such a short amount of time. The peaceful world of Arova, so calm and serene, was now preparing for war. He couldn't help but feel a deep respect for Ilva and her people. They didn't fight because they enjoyed violence. They fought because they believed in protecting what was good, what was right. Kayla entered the room, carrying a large bowl of food. "You look deep in thought," she said, setting the bowl down in front of him. "What's on your mind?" Jackson looked up at her, his expression serious. "I'm just trying to wrap my head around everything. Never expected to find myself in the middle of a conflict like this. You and your mother, you both live by a code. It's not just about fighting, is it? It's about something deeper. Something more important." Kayla smiled, sitting down beside him. "You're right. We don't fight just for the sake of fighting. We fight to protect our way of life, to protect the peace we've worked so hard to create. But it's also about strength, knowing when to fight, when to defend, and when to stand up for what we believe in." Jackson felt a sense of admiration for her and her family. He had always known that true strength came from within, but he had never seen it displayed so clearly. Ilva and Kayla were not just warriors. They were guardians of a way of life, a belief in peace and unity that was rare in the galaxy. As the evening wore on, Jackson knew that the time for talk was ending. The battle was coming, and he would have to be ready. Ilva, Kayla, and the people of Arova were preparing to defend their world, and Jackson would stand by them. Together they would face the danger that was coming their way. The days following the meeting with Ilva and Kayla were filled with intense training. Jackson threw himself into his work, helping Kayla and her mother prepare the Yerevan people for the conflict that was quickly approaching. The peaceful world of Arova was about to be tested in ways that had never been before, and Jackson was determined to make sure they were ready. Ilva's training methods were unlike anything Jackson had ever experienced. She didn't rely on traditional weapons or combat techniques alone. Instead, she taught him to use everything around him as a tool for survival. She showed him how to turn everyday objects into weapons, how to use the land itself to gain an advantage. It was an unconventional approach, but Jackson could see the wisdom in it. Ilva was teaching him not just how to fight, but how to think, how to adapt. As the days went on, Jackson found himself growing closer to Ilva and Kayla. He spent hours with them, practicing drills, studying maps, and discussing strategies. Ilva was always calm, always composed, even when the pressure was at its highest. Kayla, on the other hand, was more fiery, quick to speak and act. Together, they made a perfect team. Ilva's wisdom and Kayla's passion complemented each other in a way that made Jackson admire them both. One afternoon, after a long day of training, Ilva called Jackson aside. "I have something important to show you," she said, her voice steady as always. Jackson followed her into a small, secluded courtyard behind the house. The air here felt different, colder, heavier. It was a quiet space, hidden from the rest of the world. In the center of the courtyard was a large stone pedestal, and on top of it sat a simple, unassuming knife. "This," Ilva said, motioning to the knife, "is a weapon of great importance to our people. It's called the Kalavar knife. It was forged centuries ago by the first Rovan warriors. It is said to hold the power of our ancestors." Jackson looked at the knife, its blade simple but sharp. He felt a strange pull toward it, as though it held something deeper than just a weapon. "You will need this," Ilva continued. "This knife is more than just a tool for battle. It represents the balance of our world, the combination of strength and wisdom, peace, and war. It will test you, Jackson. You must prove yourself worthy of it." Jackson felt a sense of unease. He had trained with many weapons in his life, but this knife was different. It felt ancient, almost alive with power. He reached out to touch it, and as his fingers brushed the blade, sharp pain shot through his hand. Ilva's eyes locked onto his. "It is a test. The knife will only accept those who understand true strength. It does not favor the weak, the impatient, or the reckless. You must prove that you can wield it with respect, with honor." Jackson pulled his hand back, blood dripping from his fingers. He stared at the knife, now understanding the weight of what Ilva had said. This was not just a physical test. It was a test of character, of everything he had learned on Arova. It was about more than fighting. It was about understanding when to fight and when to stand down, when to protect and when to destroy. "Are you ready?" Ilva asked. Jackson nodded, feeling a surge of determination within him. "I'm ready." Ilva stepped aside, giving him space. Jackson took a deep breath and approached the pedestal once more. The pain in his hand was sharp, but he ignored it. Focusing on the task ahead, he reached out again, this time with more control, and grabbed the handle of the knife. The moment his fingers wrapped around it, the pain stopped. It was as if the knife had accepted him. "You have passed the first test," Ilva said, her voice quiet but approving. "Now, you must train with it. Use it to learn the balance between strength and wisdom." Jackson felt a sense of pride swell. Within him, he had earned the knife, but he knew that the real challenge was only just beginning. He had to learn to use it not just in battle, but in life. He had to understand what it truly meant to be a warrior. Over the next few days, Jackson trained with the Kalavar knife under Ilva's watchful eye. He learned to move with it, to fight with it, but also to respect it. The blade became an extension of his own will, a symbol of everything he had learned about strength and balance. Kayla often joined him during his training, offering tips and advice. She was more impatient than her mother, but Jackson could tell that her passion for protecting her people was just as strong. She pushed him harder than Ilva did, testing his limits and forcing him to think on his feet. "Move faster, Jackson." Kayla would shout, urging him to react quickly to the enemy's movements. Jackson would strike, block, and dodge, using his newfound skills with the knife. He found himself growing faster, more precise. But he also realized that the true challenge wasn't physical. it was mental. Every time he held the knife, he had to remind himself that it wasn't just about winning, it was about maintaining balance, strength, and wisdom, peace, and war. One evening, after a particularly grueling session, Jackson found himself sitting alone in the courtyard, the knife resting beside him on the stone ground. He had been pushing himself hard, trying to master every movement, every technique. But as he sat there, he realized that it wasn't the training that mattered most. It was the understanding of why he was fighting, why he had chosen to stay on Arova, to stand by Kayla and Ilva, and to protect their world. The enemy was coming, and when the time came to fight, Jackson would be ready not just with the Kalavar knife, but with the strength and wisdom to use it correctly. He stood up, feeling a new sense of resolve. The battle was not yet here, but Jackson knew one thing for sure. When it came, he would face it with. The tension on Arova was growing with each passing day. Jackson, Kayla, and Ilva had spent countless hours preparing for the battle that was quickly approaching. They had trained the Eurovan people, fortified their defenses, and gathered their allies. But despite all their preparations, there was still an unease in the air. The enemy was powerful, and no one knew exactly when or how they would strike. Jackson could feel it in his bones, the calm before the storm. It was almost as if the entire planet was holding its breath, waiting for the inevitable clash. But even in the face of uncertainty, Ilva remained calm and composed, as always. Her confidence in their strength gave Jackson the courage he needed to stay focused. One evening, as the sun began to set and the sky turned a soft shade of purple, Ilva gathered everyone in the courtyard for a final meeting before the battle. The group stood in a circle, their faces solemn as they listened to Ilva's words. "We have trained, we have prepared, and now the time has come to stand together," Ilva said, her voice steady. "The enemy will not show mercy, but we will not show weakness. We fight for our future, for our people, and for the peace we have worked so hard to protect. We will face them with honor." Jackson stood among the group, his heart pounding. He had trained with Ilva and Kayla, learned their ways, and gained their trust. But this was different. This wasn't just a training exercise. It was a real fight for survival. He had no idea what to expect when the enemy finally arrived. "We fight for each other," Kayla added, her voice strong and determined. "For our families, our friends, and for everything we love about this world. We will not let anyone take that from us." The group nodded, their faces filled with determination. Jackson could see the strength in their eyes. This wasn't just a group of warriors. This was a community united by a common cause. They were fighting not just for survival, but for everything they held dear. As night fell, Jackson found himself standing alone in the courtyard, staring up at the stars. The sky was clear, and for a moment, everything felt peaceful. But that peace was fragile. It wouldn't last long. A hand on his shoulder pulled him from his thoughts. He turned to see Kayla standing behind him, her expression serious but kind. "You're thinking too much," she said, offering him a small smile. "You've trained for this. You're ready." Jackson looked at her, grateful for her support. "I know, but it's different when it's real. I've faced battles before, but this is different. This isn't just about fighting. It's about protecting everything we've built here." Kayla nodded, her eyes softening. "I understand. But that's why we're here together. You're not alone in this. None of us are." Jackson smiled, feeling a little lighter. He had never been one to trust easily. But something about Kayla and her family made him believe in the strength of their unity. They weren't just fighting for themselves, they were fighting for each other. The next morning, the enemy finally arrived. The first sign of their approach came when the sky above Eurova darkened. Large ships appeared on the horizon, their sleek forms casting long shadows across the land. The ships were unlike anything Jackson had seen before dark, imposing, and built for destruction. He could feel the weight of their presence, and his heart skipped a beat. "They're here," Kayla said quietly, her voice laced with both fear and determination. Ilva stood beside them, her expression calm but resolute. "Stay focused," she said, her voice a sharp command. "We know what to do." "The time for talking is over now. We fight." Jackson felt his pulse quicken as the ships descended, landing just outside the city's defenses. The enemy's forces began to disembark. Large groups of soldiers in heavy armor, their faces hidden behind dark visors. They moved with purpose, marching toward the city, their weapons gleaming in the dim light. But Ilva and Kayla were ready. They had prepared the Eurovon soldiers for this moment. The defenses were set, the traps were in place, and every warrior stood ready to protect their home. As the enemy approached, Ilva raised her hand, signaling the start of the battle. The Eurovan soldiers moved swiftly, positioning themselves around the city to create a defensive line. Jackson stood with Kayla, feeling the weight of the Kalavar knife at his side. He had trained with it, respected it, and now it was time to use it in the fight for survival. The battle began with a deafening roar as the Eurovan soldiers clashed with the enemy. Jackson's heart raced as he charged forward, his knife flashing in the sunlight as he struck at the enemy soldiers. He moved with precision, his training guiding every movement, every strike. The Kalavar knife felt like an extension of himself, a perfect fit for his hand. Kayla was by his side, fighting fiercely with the same passion and skill that had made her a force to be reckoned with. Moved quickly, her eyes focused on every opponent, every opening. Jackson could see the strength in her, the same strength he had seen in her mother. They were a team, working together to protect their world. The battle raged on, each side fighting with everything they had. The enemy was strong, but the Eurovan people had something the invaders didn't: deep connection to their world and each other. As the hours passed, the Eurovon forces began to push the enemy back, slowly but surely gaining the upper hand. Jackson's arms ached, and his breath came in short gasps, but he didn't stop. He couldn't. Every strike, every movement was a step closer to victory. The enemy was beginning to retreat, but Jackson knew they wouldn't give up easily. They would fight to the end, and so would the Eurovan people, as the battle finally began. Too slow, Jackson stood among the Eurovan warriors, their faces bloodied but resolute. They had done it. They had fought with everything they had, and they had protected their world. Ilva and Kayla stood beside him, both of them battered but unharmed. They had done what they set out to protect their home, their people, and their way of life. "We've won," Jackson said, his voice filled with awe. Ilva nodded, her expression calm. "Yes, but the fight is never truly over. We must always be ready to protect what we hold dear." Jackson looked around at the people of Arova, standing strong despite the hardships they had faced. He realized that this was not just a battle, it was a fight for the future, for the peace they had worked so hard to build. And as long as he was with Kayla and Ilva, he would fight to protect it too. The battle had ended, and the enemy was retreating. Arova's forces, led by Ilva and Kayla, had proven their strength, and the peaceful world had fought back with power, unity, and resolve. Jackson stood in the aftermath, his body bruised but his spirit unbroken. The ground was littered with the remnants of the battle, and the air was thick with the smoke of burning ships. But there was a sense of calm settling over the planet now. Peace, for the moment, had been restored. As Jackson walked through the battlefield, his thoughts raced. They had won, yes, but the victory felt incomplete. The cost of the fight was heavy, and he could see the signs of war all around him. Arova had been changed, and though they had defended their home, the scars of the battle would remain. "Jackson, you did well." Kayla's voice broke through his thoughts. He turned to see her standing beside him, her armor scratched and dirtied from the battle, but her eyes still shining with determination. "Thanks," Jackson said, his voice tired but full of gratitude. "But I didn't do it alone. You and your mother. You both showed me how to fight, how to think. You're incredible." Kayla smiled, though there was a weariness in her expression. "We fought as a team. That's what matters. You've earned your place among us, Jackson. You've proved that you understand our way of life, our balance between strength and peace." Jackson nodded. He had learned more than he ever expected in his time on Arova. It wasn't just about fighting it. It was about protecting something worth fighting for. And in doing so, he had found something he didn't even know he was searching for, a sense of belonging as they walked together. Jackson could see Ilva in the distance, speaking with the other leaders of the Eurovan forces. Her calm, steady presence was a comfort to everyone around her, and Jackson couldn't help but admire her. She had led them to victory with wisdom, strength, and grace. Ilva turned and saw them approaching. Her face softened as she nodded in approval. "Jackson," she said, her voice as steady as ever, "you have proven yourself today. You fought with honor, and you fought for something greater than yourself." Jackson felt a sense of pride swell within him. "I didn't know what to expect when I came here, but I'm glad I stayed. I've learned more than I ever could have imagined." Ilva's eyes softened. "And now you must decide what comes next. You've seen the world we live in, and you've fought beside us. But there is more to this world than just war. There is peace to protect and a future to build. What will you do now, Jackson?" Her words made Jackson pause. He had come to Irave expecting to negotiate a trade agreement, but in the end, he had found something far more valuable. He had found a sense of purpose, a place where he felt needed, where he could make a difference. But now that the battle was over, he wasn't sure what his role would be. "I don't know," he admitted. "I've spent so much of my life as a soldier. I've never thought much about anything else. But now I see that there's more to life than fighting. There's something about Arova, something about you and Kayla that makes me want to stay. I feel like I belong here." Ilva's gaze softened, and she took a step closer. "You have a choice, Jackson. You can return to your people, go back to your life as a soldier, or you can stay here with us. You have proven that you have the strength to protect what is important, and you've earned a place in our world." Kayla, who had been standing beside her mother, spoke up. "You don't have to make a decision right away, but I want you to. Know that you are welcome here. You're more than just a warrior. You've become a part of our family." Jackson felt his heart swell at her words. He had never been part of something like this before, something so meaningful, so full of purpose. But it wasn't just about fighting. It was about living, about making a life in a place that valued strength, peace, and unity. "I don't want to leave," Jackson said, his voice filled with conviction. "I've seen what you've built here. I've fought beside you, and I've seen what you stand for. I want to be a part of that. I want to stay." Ilva smiled, a proud, knowing look in her eyes. "Then it is settled. You are welcome here, Jackson. You will fight with us when necessary, but you will also help us build the future of this world. You will help us protect the peace we have worked so hard to create." Kayla stepped forward and placed a hand on his shoulder. "We're glad to have you with us. You've earned your place here, Jackson. And now we will move forward together." Jackson looked around at the people of Arova, the ones who had fought beside him and the ones who had supported him. They were a strong, united people, more than just warriors. They were a family. And now Jackson knew that he was a part of that family. He had found a place where he could make a difference, where he could help protect the peace and the future of a world he had come to love. The decision was clear now. Jackson had a future here, with Kayla, Ilva, and the Eurovan people. It wouldn't be easy, and there would always be challenges ahead, but Jackson knew that he was ready. He had found his purpose, and he had found a home. As the sun began to set over the peaceful world of Arova, Jackson knew that the journey wasn't over. It had only just begun.